Once upon a time, there was a princess who had everything: beauty, wealth, and a heart made of gold. Or so it seemed. Behind her charm lay pride and selfishness, a belief that the world existed to serve her. She lived in a castle surrounded by fountains and gardens, and her most prized possession was a golden ball, a gift from her late mother. One afternoon, while playing by the well in the royal courtyard, the ball slipped from her hands and fell deep into the water. As she wept, a strange voice echoed from below. "Why do you cry, beautiful princess?" Out of the shadows rose a frog, small, green, and grinning. "Perhaps I can help you," he croaked, "if you promise to be my friend." She laughed at him then, thinking it was a joke. But that day, the spoiled princess would make a promise she never intended to keep, a promise that would change her life forever. The afternoon sun shimmered on the castle walls as the princess tossed her golden ball higher and higher into the air, giggling as it glowed like the sun itself. The servants watched from afar, careful not to disturb her. She was known throughout the kingdom not for her kindness, but for her temper. One wrong word, and even the bravest maids would flee. But when the golden ball slipped through her fingers and splashed into the dark well, her laughter vanished. She knelt at the edge, peering into the depth, but all she saw was her reflection trembling on the water's surface. Her sobs echoed through the courtyard. "My ball, my beautiful ball!" Then came the voice. "What troubles you, dear princess?" Startled, she turned. There sat a frog, warty, ugly, yet oddly calm. "My golden ball has fallen into the well," she sniffled. "I can bring it back," said the frog, "but only if you promise to be my friend, to let me dine with you, sit beside you and sleep near you." The princess laughed cruelly. "You, my friend? How ridiculous!" But desperation overcame her pride. "Fine," she said, forcing a smile. "I promise." With a splash, the frog dove into the well and soon returned, pushing the golden ball to the surface. The princess snatched it greedily and ran back to the castle without a word. Behind her, the frog called out, "A promise is a promise, princess." But she never looked back. That night, as the princess dined with her father, the king, there came a faint knock at the great hall doors. Knock, knock, knock. When the servant opened them, there stood the frog, dripping with water and determination. "Your Highness," croaked the frog, "I have come for what was promised." The princess froze. "Father, make it go away," she whispered, but the king frowned. "My daughter, did you give your word to this creature?" The princess lowered her head. "I may have." "Then you must keep it," said the king firmly. "A promise made must never be broken." And so the frog hopped up beside her plate, eating from her golden dish and sipping from her crystal cup. Every bite made her stomach twist. When dinner ended, she ran to her room and slammed the door. But minutes later came another knock, soft. "Patient, persistent princess," said the frog. "You promised I could sleep near you." Tears filled her eyes as she turned away. "Go away," she whispered. But deep down, she knew she couldn't escape what she owed. The frog's voice haunted her dreams. The next morning, he was still there, waiting patiently by her door. He didn't demand or threaten. Instead, he simply looked up at her with eyes that held surprising gentleness. "A promise is not a chain," he said softly. "It's a choice that shapes who we are." Something in those words stung. The princess had never thought about honor or compassion. No one had ever dared to teach her. Everyone obeyed her out of fear, not love. Reluctantly, she let him follow her through the garden. She even shared crumbs of her breakfast with him. Over time, her disgust began to fade. The frog told her stories of the world beyond the castle, of rivers that sparkled like diamonds, of animals that sang at dawn. He spoke with such joy that the princess found herself listening, then smiling, then laughing. But as the sun set, a strange sadness filled her. For the first time, she felt that the frog was more than what he seemed. Days turned to weeks, and the princess grew accustomed to her new companion. The frog no longer seemed ugly, just unusual, even charming in his own way. One evening she asked, "Why do you speak so kindly to me after all I've done?" He gazed at her with knowing eyes. "Because I was once like you, proud and ungrateful." Her breath caught. "You?" "Yes," he said, his voice trembling. "I was a prince who cared only for myself, until a forest witch taught me humility. She cursed me into this form, saying I would remain so until I earned a heart worthy of love, and until someone learned to love me, not for my crown, but for my soul." The princess felt her chest tighten. Suddenly his patience, his wisdom, his gentleness, it all made sense. She knelt beside him, tears glimmering. "Then maybe your curse isn't just yours," she whispered. "Maybe it's mine too," the frog smiled faintly. Perhaps that night thunder rolled over the castle. The princess lay awake thinking about the frog's words. She realized how much she had changed, how kindness, once a burden, had become her joy. She rose quietly and found him by the window, watching the storm. "You've kept your promise," he said softly. "No," she replied, "not yet." And before fear could stop her, she leaned forward and kissed his forehead. A brilliant light filled the room. The wind howled and the thunder stopped. When she opened her eyes, the frog was gone. In his place stood a young man, tall, graceful, with kind eyes that mirrored the frog's soul. "I am free," he whispered, "because you found beauty where others saw none." The princess smiled, tears of joy falling freely, but before she could speak, the door burst open. The king stood there pale and trembling. "Daughter," he said, "something terrible has happened." That night thunder rolled over the castle. The princess lay awake thinking about the frog's words. She realized how much she had changed, how kindness, once a burden, had become her joy. She rose quietly and found him by the window, watching the storm. "You've kept your promise," he said softly. "No," she replied, "not yet." And before fear could stop her, she leaned forward and kissed his forehead. A brilliant light filled the room. The wind howled and the thunder stopped. When she opened her eyes, the frog was gone. In his place stood a young man, tall, graceful, with kind eyes that mirrored the frog's soul. "I am free," he whispered, "because you found beauty where others saw none." The princess smiled, tears of joy falling freely, but before she could speak, the door burst open. The king stood there pale and trembling. "Daughter," he said, "something terrible has happened." The candles flickered as the thunder roared again. The air grew cold, unnaturally so. "What is it, father?" the princess asked, her heart pounding. "The witch," the king said, voice shaking. "She has returned." The prince, at once a frog, stepped forward. "She comes for me?" The curse was broken too soon. Lightning flashed across the window, revealing a shadowed figure in the storm. A woman cloaked in black, her eyes glowing with fury. "You think love can defy me?" she hissed from the darkness. "You've forgotten the price of magic." The prince shielded the princess as wind shattered the glass. The witch raised her staff, power swirling around her. "If your hearts are truly pure," she said, "then prove it. One of you must choose, freedom or sacrifice." The princess's voice trembled. "What do you mean?" The witch smiled cruelly. "One must return to the well and take the other's place." The thunder cracked, and everything went dark, to be continued.